Hey everybody, I'm here at Modern Doll Collectors Convention, and artist Joshua David McKenney has graciously agreed to do an interview with me, and he is the artist behind Pigeon dolls. And so Joshua, the first question I want to ask you is, what was your favorite doll when you were a little kid?
Oh, interesting question. I guess I grew up in sort of a conservative home, and I wasn't really allowed to play with a lot of feminine toys. So I always sort of drooled over Barbie, of course, but that was sort of off limits. My sisters had them, and I was able to kind of...
Barbie's like everybody's first love, pretty much.
I was allowed to have a Miss Piggy doll that came with a Kermit doll, and because they were like a couple and a character, the Kermit I quickly hid, discarded and just carried around Piggy everywhere. So I would, and I just everywhere. I think I got her on my 3rd birthday, and I would just carry her. She was like my first doll, and even still to this day, like I have a Miss Piggy tattoo on my arm. Like Miss Piggy to me is like my first representation of like glamour and femininity and beauty, and I just love her.
And she totally embodies all of those things. I think that's such an interesting story. What made you decide that you wanted to start making your own dolls?
It was very sort of like primal instinct. I started seeing these really amazing dolls on the internet, in particular from this artist Marina Pishkova, who does Enchanted Doll.
Her dolls are beautiful.
I was obsessed with her work, and I would just look at it all the time, and it just had never occurred to me until I saw her work that a doll could be so exquisite and elevated and sort of melancholy and just not directed at children at all. Like it was completely an art object, and it was just something really high end. And so I really just like, fangirled on her for a long time, and eventually like I was like, I think I want to try this. I'd always dabbled in sculpting a little bit, and before I was making dolls, I was working as an illustrator, illustrating women's lifestyle, beauty, and fashion, and sort of this feminine aesthetic has always been part of my artistic expression. And so yeah, I started taking some sculpture classes and ceramic classes. I knew that she worked in porcelain, so I was kind of focused on that for a little while, like learning how porcelain works, how to fire it. I actually took a class that was for people that throw pots, and I went in there with pictures of her dolls, and I was like, I want to like make like, I wasn't even saying dolls. I was like, I want to make like sculptures, kind of like this on porcelain. It doesn't have to be movable. And they were like, well, we throw pots here, but if you want to sit in the back with some clay, you can, as long as you pay admission. I'm like, sure.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, I made this like little, it was like a bust, and the head kind of moved a little bit, but she didn't have arms or feet or anything. But it was my first sort of stab into using ceramics to sculpt.
The first time I was introduced to Pidgin, she was on the cover of one of the doll magazines I get. I can't remember which one it was, but she had like a blue and fair face, and I thought she was so beautiful. And I saw there were pictures in there too of your first original pigeons. Can you tell me kind of about her a little bit?
Yeah, so that was a Haute Doll magazine.
Haute Doll, that's what it was.
Which I think has merged now with Dolls magazine.
Yeah, they're
and Sharon Wright, who was the editor at the time, was super supportive and put me on the cover of that, which was like just so great of her to do. So she's watching this issue. Thank you. So so the original Pigeon was I had made 2 other ball jointed dolls before I was doing Pidgin. The first one was named Love Child, and the second one was a porcelain mermaid ball jointed doll that had a lot of different parts. And when I kind of put that down after that was not a successful project, and I'd worked so hard on it, I was given a classic French fashion doll by my friend Mel Odom for Christmas, and she had a soft fabric body and porcelain limbs, and a porcelain head, and I was like, I want to do like a sort of modern version of this type of fashion doll, and there's going to be no moving parts aside from the fabric, but that way I can really focus on her face and her hair and dressing her and making and just make trying to engineer all these porcelain parts to fit together over and over again. By the time I was finished with one doll, I was like, I don't even love you anymore. Like I was just so
you were sick of it.
I was just so burnt out. So she was really big. Like so, I sculpted her like this big, and then porcelain shrinks in the kiln a little bit, but she still ended up being about 30 inches tall. And I also have a photography background, that's what I majored in college, and I kind of created her that big to be photographed, so I could put her in the real world and set her up, and she kind of worked,
the scale,
and I could really get a lot of detail in the face. And, I didn't really sell any dolls to that scale. I was just sort of like using them as models and getting the name Pidgin out there and getting.
I was about to say, because I never see one of those on the secondary market, because I've looked, and so that makes sense now. Because I was thinking their owners really love those dolls.
There's definitely I did sell a few. There are some, but
they really love those dolls because I never see them come up. So that's awesome.
Yeah, the soft-bodied ones. I don't really see them come up very much either.
So that's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's something, like, I still love that doll whenever I hold them. Like, there's something so nice about this sort of, like, squishy, soft body, and, like, it just feels really nice.
Well, you put your heart into it, too, and that's your first iteration of your girl.
Yeah, totally. And it harkened back to, like, sort of who I imagine Pidgin to be, which is sort of this modern girl that has sort of a vintage silhouette, and sort of, she loves to sort of pay homage to older fashions and styles, and I do that a lot with Pidgin in her current incarnation too. So I think having her be sort of a modern girl with modern proportions, but the stylization is that of a vintage French fashion doll. I think sort of informed the doll she became as far as like her personality and image.
So speaking of current Pidgin, Joshua brought several Pidgin dolls with him so that we could look at them. So could we have a look first at your MSD size or your 16-inch size Pidgin?
Sure. I have two here. This is part of my.
And you do a different collection for every show.
I try to. I usually do one a season, and then sometimes I will do one specifically for a convention like this. So I put this collection together really quick. I actually just moved from New York to Los Angeles, and my husband and I just moved into our apartment like 2 weeks ago.
Oh gosh.
So we don't have a lot of furniture yet. Yeah, so I was literally just on a folding table in our living room with no other furniture, just kind of finishing these dolls and the collections.
One thing I really love about Pidgin is I love all the different makeup looks you do with her. That is one of my favorite things, is scrolling through your Instagram and looking at her makeup and just seeing how each face is so different, and each face expresses such a different emotion just depending on what style of makeup you put on them, and I love that. And then on that subject, there's a whole culture that's built up around Pidgin of people, makeup artists, and people paying homage to Pidgin. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Pidgin has this really amazing community of followers. They're mostly on Instagram, a little bit on Facebook, but they're not really doll collectors. They're
that's what's so fascinating to me about it.
They're mostly makeup artists or other kind of creative people. She also gets a lot of drawings and that sort of thing. People that respond to her that way, but she is kind of like, I didn't really intend her to be this way, but she's become this sort of like beauty doll in this way. Like she's a fashion doll, but she sort of represents and talks about makeup in a way.
She's so glamorous.
Yeah.
I mean, she really is.
Oh, thank you. It just kind of happened very organically. I've always been really interested in makeup, and in particular makeup's power to change one's face and expression. And as a teenager, I sort of had two influences that I think really informed that. The first was the model Kate Moss, who has a very similar bone structure to Pidgin. I just loved how she looked different every photo, and she could be really high glamour, or be very impish, or be very boyish, or whatever, just depending on how her face, because it was just a sort of blank canvas. And then the second influence is I was really obsessed with the makeup artist Kevin Aquan. He had some books called like The Art of Makeup. He did like 3 or 4 in the 90s. And basically he would talk about like the transformative power of makeup, and he's sort of one of the first makeup artists to talk about like contouring and taking out your eyebrows and drawing in new ones. And he would take celebrities and then dress them up as other celebrities. So he'd have like Winona Ryder as Elizabeth Taylor, or Lisa Marie Presley as Marilyn Monroe, and he would basically paint a different face on
a
the
celebrity.
Face. And he was really good at it, and I was just fascinated by that he could, through the power of makeup and lighting, evoke these sort of different moods and characters and people. And I think that really informed like what I wanted to do with dolls. And so I sculpted Pidgin to be as universal as possible. So she doesn't have a particular age or a particular race or a particular era that she's from. She's just sort of an aesthetic and a style.
She's so versatile, and it's, like I said, I just love the makeup looks you do with her. And in my mind, I see one day a Pidgin and a makeup brand collaboration.
I'd love to do that,
Because I see those, in the store, and I'm like, they need to do a Pidgin collaboration, because that would be so cool.
Yeah, no,
I would totally buy it.
Cool. Well, if there's any makeup brands out there that are interested.
But anyway, so I kind of got off topic, but if you would tell me a little bit about these two dolls.
Sure. So this is Pidgin in her 5th generation. I've been, so as I said, Pidgin started out very large. She's been through different scales and sizes as I've sort of evolved as a doll artist and figured out what works for me, what collectors are looking for, what I want to shoot as a photographer, what I want to do as a makeup look. And I've sort of been using the 5th generation of Pidgin now for about 2.5 years, which is the longest. Usually I would sort of change her every year. She seemed to evolve every year. And this seems like a really good size for me. I really like this scale. It's small enough where it's collectible, but it's large enough where I can get a lot of detail in the face, and she can like support a close-up. I can really like get a tight shot of her face, and there's a lot of detail. And
as we say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah,
so.
it works for me. So I really like this scale a lot. But this year also I have, I'm sure we'll talk about this, like 2 new incarnations of Pidgin that sort of bring her into.
I just got one of those. She's so cute.
Just to take her into other directions and explore the character and the brand a little bit. But yeah, so this is 16, and she's roughly slim MSD size. She's shaped a little differently than other slim MSDs. So
she is, for sure.
There's some universality with clothing and finding things for her, but I'm working on producing more and more garments for her specifically.
That's really good news. I love that, because I have a few of the Pidgin specific dresses, and they are gorgeous.
Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous. So let's talk about your chibi Pidgin.
Sure. She is here. I'll put these.
And this was the souvenir doll for his seminar that we had yesterday here at Modern Doll.
Yes. So this is my new doll called Pigeon Doll Chibi, and essentially, chibi is a Japanese word that means short, or it doesn't necessarily mean a child. It just sort of means the proportions of a child. It's a stylization term in general. So chibi can be applied to any character. If you took Wonder Woman and made her head really big and her body really small and enlarged her eyes, she would be a chibi version of Wonder Woman. So it's a term that speaks more about proportion than the age of the character. But that said, she is kind of a younger version of Pidgin. She sort of evokes
more youthful kind of.
Yeah.
And what I love is as glamorous as Pidgin is, Chibi Pidgin is just that cute. She is so cute, and she's so definitely recognizable as your work. And
Thank
so
you,
I love that. She's just got that beautiful, her face is beautiful and cute at the same time. If you can combine those two things, that's the way I feel about her.
I appreciate that.
So I really love her. She's so cute.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy with how she turned out. There were a few incarnations where I was like, I sculpt digitally, so I would print out different prototypes and see what felt right. And originally her head was even larger, and it was too much. I was like, I think it's a little too big, so I shrunk it down. Just trying to find the exact right proportions.
I think this one is perfect.
Yeah, it feels nice in the hand.
It does. It really does.
Photographs well. No, I'm really excited about it, and so this is the sort of debut look of Pigeon Doll Chibi, but I'll be producing her in like other colors, other skin tones.
And how can people purchase her when you release those? I assume you'll announce it on Instagram, Facebook.
Exactly.
And how will people be able to purchase?
It's a good question. I'll probably release them in a similar way that I do the 16-inch Pidgin, where I'll do a collection, and I'll usually work on a collection of like 10 to 15 dolls.
And it's kind of first come.
And it's kind of first come, first serve, and I'll announce it ahead of time, say like, oh, I'm going to release a new collection.
Right.
and then I just put them up, and then emails come in, and then they're gone, and you know, which is great. I'm so
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be supported by my collectors, and yeah, you just kind of have to pay attention, and I do it that way, or I'll bring them to a convention.
Right.
And I'm trying to get into doing more like limited editions, so they can sort of like, you know, where I'll do a collection of like 10 to 30 dolls of all the same look. You know, they're all still hand painted by me.
Right.
I dress them all, but that way they can sort of live a little bit longer on the website, as opposed to a one of a kind that, you know, once it's gone,
flies out the door.
Yeah.
Right. That if somebody really had their heart set on it, that would
Right.
give them a better chance of
Right.
getting it. I like that.
Yeah.
So you've also been working on these tiny hair videos. If you follow him on Instagram, like I do, there have been clips in his stories and Instagram, and they are so cute. And you have a couple of those dolls here
I
with
do,
you.
yes.
If we could look at those and
Sure.
talk about them.
So Tiny Hair was a video series created for a Snapchat channel called Sweet, which is owned by Hearst, the publishing company.
Media company.
Yeah. And so essentially they produce these videos for their Snapchat channel. They do a bunch of really cool shows that are really fun. But this show in particular, they sort of had this idea of taking a doll through a salon experience, but like in perceived real time. So you're using real hair products and real dyes and real, and they've created a little miniature salon for her. So when they asked me to do it, they're like, we have this idea for this project, but we don't, we're not doll makers, and we're actually not hair people either.
We just want to do it.
We just want to do it. How do you do it? And fortunately, it was like they really contacted the right person, because I don't right now, but I used to color my hair a lot, and I know a lot about hair processing. So, and I dye a lot of my doll's hair, and I make wigs, and so I was like, well, this is how you would do that. And we talked about scale, and I was like, well, the dolls that I do are kind of big. There's 16 inches, which is different than what most people know a fashion doll to be, which is 12 inches.
Right.
And they're like, well, it'd be great if we could do it at 1/6 scale, because they like that juxtaposition of like a big hand and a little head. And I was like, well, I've been working on this version of Pidgin called Pigeon Petite that is going to come out really soon. She's here.
She is amazing.
I'll bring her over first. So this is the one that we used in the video, or one of the ones. We did 6 different looks. This one is modeled after Cardi B, and in the video, which should be out on Facebook really soon actually, we take her from a brunette and we bleach out her hair, and then we do this rainbow wig, which was
It's so pretty.
quite labor intensive. We had a stylist on set assisting me as we like blended all the colors, but yeah, we did it in real time. So each of the episodes is sort of based around a celebrity look, or a look that a real celebrity wore. So there's like a Kim Kardashian and an Ariana Grande and a Rihanna and a Cardi B, and each one sort of goes through like a makeover experience where you don't see the person at all. It's just the doll moving through the salon.
She's getting treated.
And then human-sized hands doing all the things with little brushes and little combs.
I think
it's very satisfying to watch.
They're really cute when they're cutting the hair and when they're putting the dye on the hair. You guys have to watch it. It's going to be on Facebook on 17th.
Yeah, it'll be
like the full
widescreen version will be. It's going to be coming out on TikTok soon, and then it'll be on Facebook, and then I think eventually it'll go to 17's YouTube as well.
And how long did it take you guys to do those? Because just watching that, in my mind, I think about that must have taken hours upon hours upon hours.
It took a long time. I mean, a lot of people contributed to it. The artist that created the set, his name is Philip Naveen, and he's based out of Brooklyn, and he built the entire set. I sent him a little prototype of Pigeon Petite, just so he could get the scale. Excuse me, and he made little chairs, he had a little working sink that water could come out of for her to lean back and get her hair rinsed, and little combs, and there was a lighting person and a production person and a director, and we all kind of worked on it for a long time behind the scenes, or like before we even started shooting. So my job was to get the dolls made. So we actually, because I had only started sculpting this new version of Pidgin, I hadn't had any prototypes yet, so I had my friend Isabel, who has this really beautiful 3D printer, print the dolls for me.
It's good to have friends like that.
It really is. She's amazing. So I was able to we basically just printed, because the resin's very expensive, we printed 6 different heads and then 2 bodies, one for each complexion we used. And then we kind of swapped them out and used them. And then I made all the wigs. And the wigs had to be, some of it had to, we had to like swap out wigs, you know, in between like a brunette and a blonde look just for time's sake. But then in real time we would like dye them all the colors so they became like all the rainbow or surreal colors and things. But some of it, like some of the bleaching we did do in real time, which is also challenging to get that to work. But yeah, no. So anyway, to answer your question, I probably spent about a month preparing and about six really long days filming, where we got there at like 9 a.m. and we would leave probably at 1 in the morning every day.
Wow.
Just
the hard work really paid off, because those videos are incredible. You watch them and they're really amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I'm really proud of them.
You should be. They're incredible.
It really has so much to do with the team that I worked with, and everybody was just so detail oriented and really.
And I love that people not in the doll community are reaching out to you, and you know, for these art projects that you do. So I know that. Can you talk about any other art projects you've been involved with?
Yeah, I mean, I have another one that I can sort of allude to. It should be coming out soon, but I did a stop motion animation project in Los Angeles, which is really exciting to do with my normal 16-inch pigeon, where I was able to hire like a whole staff. So we rented a room, we had a lighting person, we had a stop motion animator, we had somebody that helped. I helped a lot doing the props that we used in the animation, but it was this big team effort, and
that's so awesome.
We shot it for 2 days in this very warm. The thing about stop motion animation is you have to cut off all outside light, because it has to be consistent through the whole thing. If there's any sort of flicker,
good point. Yeah, I would never think of something like that.
Yeah, there can be no windows, anything. It's a really hot room. Animating this dolls, we've got a very short amount of footage, but it looks amazing.
Yes.
And so I've been trying to like just. I love the doll collecting community, and I love being a part of it.
But I think your other collaborations are so unique.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool, because you're celebrated both as a doll artist and just as an artist without the qualifying doll in front of that.
Well, thanks.
So I think that's amazing.
I try to think outside the box as much as I can.
Yeah.
And, you know, before I started making dolls, I wasn't much of a collector. I just sort of all of a sudden got obsessed with making dolls, and I've had to sort of learn by fire about the community, which has been amazing. And I've met so many amazing doll artists that are now my very good friends, and I'm so happy to be part of this community. But I think because I wasn't much of a collector before I started making dolls, I sort of had this like different sort of idea of like what a doll. I wasn't like playing by anybody else's rules.
I think that's what makes your doll so unique, and that's why we embrace it here in the doll community. So what can we look forward to? What are you working on now that we're going to see coming up soon?
Sure. So I have 2 more of this. So we used the Pigeon Petite, is what I call her. She's sort of a very simplified version of my normal 16-inch pigeon doll. A very simple articulation that's meant for more of a fashion doll collector in the 1/6 12-inch scale.
Which is great, because there's so many 1/6 accessories out there.
Yeah, I wanted her to be very easy to find.
And she's a fun size, so if you like to travel with your dolls and you don't want to take a full-size 16-inch doll, this is a great size.
That was actually, it's so funny you say that. That was really my main focus, is like I want a doll that you can just like pull out of your bag and take a picture of, you know, just something very easy. That's what I'm looking forward to about the petite girl.
I
love my 16-inch girls and shooting them and everything, but they are very like they stay at home.
Yes,
and
they do.
Whereas this can be a little easier to travel with. So this one in the center is a 3D printed prototype that we used for tiny hair. These 2 are my first 2 sort of samples from my casting studio.
I can see that from the backside, Wow.
So they're a little, the jointing is a little bit more refined, and the engineering is just a little bit better. They have like silicone neck pieces in their necks to help their heads pose. But she's cast in resin. She has inset eyes, just like my other pigeon, and she wears a wig, so her hair's not rooted.
Okay. So she's fully customizable,
Yeah,
sort of from that perspective.
Exactly, and the wigs and all of these wigs are natural fiber wigs, as opposed to, I use a lot of synthetic fibers for my larger ones, just because they tend to last longer on the shelf and stuff.
That makes sense, right?
I always say that styling like mohair or alpaca is a little bit like styling cat hair. Like it's just very temperamental, and it's sensitive to the moisture in the air and that sort of thing. So, as you can see, I've like hairsprayed the daylights out of these wigs just to get keep the shape and stuff.
Right.
But what's fun about a natural fiber wig is you can dye it, you can heat set it, you can curl it, you can play with it like real hair, which sort of also is what we do in Tiny Hair. These are all about like playing with your doll's hair like you do your own.
Right.
So I think with this scale of doll, I'm going to keep that as consistent as I can, and not offer mostly natural fiber wigs, because then people can play with them, and I think that's really fun. That is fun.
Will you introduce them in the same way, a small collection maybe to start, and then?
Yeah, so I think for the first collection, what I'm going to do, you can't hold me to this, but what I'm aiming to do.
This is a preview.
Yeah, this is a very preview. What I'm shooting for right now, and there's always things that come up, and you have to roll with it. But I'm hoping to release the first collection in 4 different complexion colors: a pale white, a tan, a dark brown, and then a color called obsidian, which is like a pure black. And offer basically the same doll in those 4 colors for people to choose from, and each one will have a limited amount in that color. Wearing a dress I designed that my friend Mark is creating the sample for me, and then I'll have that produced. So it's like a really pretty little yellow dress with a pink fur coat, and I think probably this pink wig I just really like. Yeah. I've been really into Valley of the Dolls lately, the movie. Okay. And just the aesthetic of these sort of like big bump it hair has really appealed to me lately. So I think you're gonna maybe see a lot of that influence
see some of that
in the future.
Influence coming up here.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Any other projects upcoming that you want to tell us about, or anything else that we missed here that we really want people to know?
There's a few things coming up, but I don't know if I can talk about them yet. I can say that we're going to be shooting Tiny Hair Season 2 in November, and there's going to be some fun new additions. I think we've really sort of gotten our groove on. Like we all know we've all worked together once before. We know what to do. We have the set built already. We know what shots we need, and so we can push new things even further. And so it's going to be, I think, a really exciting season, and I hope that it continues. It's a really fun project to do, and I like making these little videos. So I'm going to be doing that, and my stop motion animation project will be coming out soon. I'll be posting about that when that happens. And so I have these 2 new chibi and Pigeon Petite, and I think an interesting thing about these 2 dolls coming out together is they're actually like more or less the same scale
but they're
doll.
Very different.
But they're very different.
They're so different.
They're sort of new incarnations of Pigeon, where one is more of like a mature fashion doll, and the other is more of like a chibi style, and they're surreal.
They're both very appealing to me in real life, I can just tell you. Yeah. So if you lean more one way or the other, they're both amazing dolls. I can just tell you that.
Thank you. What's fun is they can actually share a lot of the same clothes, because their torsos are pretty much the same size.
Length. Okay.
She has a woman's body, and she has more of a child's body, but they're the same like shoulder width and everything. So like this dress can fit on this doll.
Oh, that's good
to
know.
That she's all head and she's all leg, and like their torsos are about the same, which is it's kind of funny. Like
that
when
is
you
funny.
think about
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to let people know?
I think that's it. I mean, you can follow me on Instagram.
Yes, please do.
At Pidgin Doll, spelled Pidgin. I'm sure we'll put it in the link.
His photography is amazing, and so I love to see the pictures he comes out with and the work in progress. And when you're doing the makeup ones are my favorite.
Thanks.
I love watching when he's doing. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I'm trying to do more videos.
You can just get trapped watching that.
It's very soothing, I think, to watch people work.
It really is. Especially for somebody that's not creative at all, but to watch, it's so satisfying to watch you do that. And,
It's definitely. I'm gaining the skills. It's like you have to, rather than using your eyes, you actually have to like put a camera right here and watch it through the camera, which at first feels unnatural, but then you get kind of used to it, and it's not so bad. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for your time. I am so appreciative of you doing this with me, and I hope to see you next year at Modern Doll. I don't know if you've committed yet.
I haven't committed yet. I'm
I know you're very busy,
yeah.
But anyway, thanks for spending the time with me here.
You're so welcome,
and we'll see you later.
All right, see you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.